Speaking of being independent from reliance upon China too much, that's not something it seems concerns the Albanese government terribly much. One thing left-wing Western governments don't get about China and the CCP is that they do not respect weakness, nor kowtowing. They see it as a green light to actually double down and take advantage when other parties grovel. And we have done so much groveling to win back access to Chinese markets for some of our banned goods, it's embarrassing. Australian journalist Cheng Lei was imprisoned in Beijing for almost 3 years. I'll just repeat that so it really sinks in. Australian imprisoned in Beijing for almost 3 years on trumped-up national security charges and torn from her family in Melbourne. She was released earlier this year and now works for Sky News Australia. But surprisingly, even here on Australian soil, the Chinese Communist authorities think they can control her movements. And it seems they can. Chinese diplomats stood in front of her to try to block her from TV cameras during Anthony Albanese's news conference with China's Premier Li Qiang at Parliament House in Canberra earlier this week. Here's how ABC News covered it Tuesday.
They made several very blatant attempts to try and block Cheng Lei from the cameras. Camera operators there in the heart of Parliament House were essentially trying to get a shot of her in the same room as the Premier. That was obviously something that the Chinese officials did not want to happen, and so they physically tried to block the shots. That really infuriated not just journalists, but also Australian officials who felt that that behaviour was entirely inappropriate. In the end, because the Chinese officials wouldn't move, Cheng Lei essentially had to move to the front row. After that, we saw a situation where those shots could in fact be made, but the entire affair was really unfortunate.
Albo tried to laugh the incident off, calling it a ham-fisted attempt by Chinese officials to obstruct her, and rude and inappropriate. But there was no serious addressing of the issue or how much an affront and insult it is to our nation to do that on our soil. Peter Dutton rightly told Albanese to grow a backbone and stand up for our country. But then Cheng Lei was later blocked at the Chinese embassy and not allowed to cover Dutton's meeting with Premier Chiang either. That situation is a bit different because technically the Chinese embassy is Chinese soil. But Cheng said she was also kept out of the opening remarks of the Dutton meeting at the Hyatt Hotel beforehand. She said an Australian official was the one who told her that she would not be allowed to go in. You may be surprised to learn, or maybe not, that no Australian journalists were allowed to ask Premier Li a question during his visit. Oh no, can't face questions if you're a communist. The whole thing falls apart if you have to answer any actual questions. This is why I love the left so much. They never want to shut down free speech. And they open themselves up to interrogation all the time, and their wonderful ideology can stand up to scrutiny. Oh yes. Sadly, Cheng Lei wrote in a piece on the Sky News website that, quote, some of her Aussie business contacts went silent after the story broke, and she wondered if all the Canberra bureaucrats were annoyed at her. What we can be sure of is that there are plenty in business and politics in Australia dependent on that wonderful China money, and they'll excuse any behaviour of the communist regime, whether it's running roughshod over the rights of people in formerly British Hong Kong and jailing innocent protesters, or the 1 million Uyghurs rounded up and put into concentration camps in the most horrific move of its kind since the Second World War, or the jailing of innocent Australians in China on trumped-up charges. But shh, we mustn't upset the big customer. With Aussies like that all over the place, China doesn't need to send its own goons in. We have our own gutless Australian sellouts who'll take care of any China critics here at home without China having to lift a finger. Did you know lots of Aussie YouTubers have to make American content to survive? We want to keep producing Aussie news, and to do that, we need your direct help. If you'd like to advertise on our show, please get in touch in the comments below or DM us on Twitter. Our Australian content means we deliver mostly an Aussie audience. Or if you'd just like to help us with a donation, please click on the Super Thanks button that's with the little $sign right under the video frame just here. Or just click the subscribe button and bell. That's free and it helps a lot.